Bust-A-Move, known as Puzzle Bobble in the East, is a puzzle game from Taito, debuting in arcades in 1994. The home ports followed shortly thereafter, with both the Neo Geo CD and Super Nintendo versions arriving in 1995. The game was an immediate hit, and continues to spawn sequels and spin-offs to this very day. Like most puzzle games, Bust-A-Move is a deceptively simple game. The goal is to match 3 or more colored bubbles on the screen, which then pop. You win the round by clearing all of the bubbles off the playfield. Each round starts with a new layout of bubbles. At the bottom of the screen, you control a pointer and press the action button to fire a bubble. The bubbles shoot in a straight line, but can ricochet off the sides of the play area. The gameplay is incredibly simple, and moving the pointer is slick and predictable. On the first level, or after using a continue, the game provides a dotted line on the screen, showing you where the bubble will land at that particular pointing position. This is a helpful way to quickly get up to speed on the game's mechanics. Levels vary from having a bunch of bubbles all clustered at the top of the screen to a single strand of bubbles down the middle, and everything in between. The game area is 8 bubbles wide, and the vertical aspect of the playfield gets shorter and shorter as the puzzle progresses. You lose once the uncleared bubbles are pushed past the bottom. The arcade version of Bust-A-Move, as well as this Neo Geo CD version, feature 30 levels total, and an hour to 90 minutes should be enough to complete the game. Bust-A-Move for the Super Nintendo features a total of 99 levels. From what I can tell, most of the original 30 levels are here, with an additional 66 created for this port. The SNES release also features some special bubbles, offering additional variety to the basic formula. The zapper bubble shoots across the screen, clearing all bubbles in its path, causing the remaining bubbles to fall. The fire bubble is a bomb of sorts, and clears all bubbles in its blast radius. Again, any bubbles that are left hanging will also fall from the playfield. Lastly, there is the water bubble. This is the least interesting of the 3, and simply turns into a waterfall, changing all bubbles in its path to the same color. I still don't truly understand how this one works, but I do appreciate the added variety. While the simple nature of Bust-A-Move makes it immediately pleasing, it's the fantastic musical track that puts it over the top. The track is the ultimate earworm, the composition is excellent, it progresses nicely, the length is spot on, the instruments sound clean, and there are a few voices thrown in. More importantly, it speeds up the closer the bubbles are to the bottom of the screen. This creates a real sense of urgency and tension while you make your way through the puzzle. The Super Nintendo version sounds very Super Nintendo-y, as one would expect. Still, the classic Bust-A-Move tune is recreated surprisingly well, considering the sound hardware is completely different. One major thing has been omitted, however. The music does not speed up as the bubbles reach the bottom of the screen. As a result, SNES Bust-A-Move doesn't feel as frantic, and most of the arcade-style tension has been lost. Finally, we arrive at the graphics. Bust-A-Move definitely does not push the Neo Geo hardware. However, the detailed bubbles look nice, and the sheer amount of color on the screen is visually appealing. The backgrounds follow suit. They are vibrant and detailed, yet are never distracting. Bust-A-Move is a really well-crafted game. Despite Bust-A-Move not being a graphically intense game, it's surprisingly watered down in the SNES version. The most obvious change is the decrease in horizontal resolution. Now, this shouldn't really matter, as the sides of Bust-A-Move don't really contain any useful gameplay elements. But the SNES version takes things even farther. The bubble sprites are smaller and less detailed. The point values are missing when bubbles pop, and the backgrounds don't have nearly the same level of detail as the Neo Geo CD version. To its credit, Bust-A-Move on the Super Nintendo does feature many more backgrounds. Some even scroll, which is an interesting effect. I still can't help but feel disappointed, however, as the Super Nintendo is capable of so much more. Overall, both versions do offer a satisfying game of Bust-A-Move. Everything I love about the game remains intact. You still receive scoring bonuses if your bubble popping results in additional bubbles dropping. An additional bonus is given the faster you clear a stage, and both feature a fun 2-player mode. However, I do find the Super Nintendo version to be inferior. While I enjoy having significantly more levels, the game just doesn't quite pack the same punch as the Neo Geo version. The reduced resolution of the playfield makes placing bubbles easier, and some of the challenge is lost as a result. This can make the game feel a bit boring as you plow through tons of stages. The biggest problem, however, is the music. Like Dr. Mario and Tetris, the quickening music as you get closer to failing adds a tension and layer of depth to the gameplay the SNES version desperately needs. Don't get me wrong, this is still a great puzzle game for the SNES, and I highly recommend it, but the Neo Geo CD version is just better. Perhaps it's an unfair comparison, as this really isn't a port, but the real deal. Even without the additional bubble types, a more limited selection of backgrounds, and just 30 puzzles, it still reigns supreme. The additional resolution gives you a bit more control over aiming, and the game is a touch more challenging. Bust-a-Move on the Neo Geo CD looks better, plays better, and sounds better, and trumps the additional features found in the cartridge counterpart. The fact that it's arcade perfect is exactly why you buy a Neo Geo CD in the first place.